It's been almost 50 days since President Biden has been in office, and he still hasn't had a press conference. They say he's going to have one sometime this month. It's a long time. How come? What does it mean? It's Rob Nelson Live. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Monday Night Rob Nelson Live, coming at you from our studios in Los Angeles. And you guys are everywhere across the country, across the world, on whatever social platform you happen to prefer, if you haven't been canceled from it yet. And as always, I love your feedback, your interaction. We like to say it's the most interactive talk show on the web. So the more you guys feedback and interact with me, and if I don't get to all your comments, we still put them on the screen. So thanks for watching. Thanks for being part of it. Let's dive right in. Joe Biden, President Biden, has not had a press conference in 50 days. Why does that matter? Well, we joke. We joke that we joke that Joe Biden was working from the basement. Appreciate the comments coming up already, you guys. Monkey arms right in there early on. Yes, busy fixing the problems of the last 4 years. I'll get to that in a second, because he has been. And I'm going to address that. It's a fair point, but it's not a good excuse to not have a press conference. Let me tell you why. So the joke was that Biden campaigned from the basement and he won anyway. And let's be honest, he did campaign from the basement. And why? Well, two reasons. One, because there was a pandemic. Okay. 3 reasons. 2, because Joe Biden, when he gets in front of the press, just says stuff. He's a little like Trump. I mean, he's got a thin temper. He goes off on people. The gaffes are funny, but he also gets really mad at people. He says it's really annoying when they push his buttons, which, again, I don't mind. It's authentic. I like it out there. But it was a smart strategy. Campaign mostly out of sight. No need not to. People who wanted to get rid of Trump, basically it was yours to lose. Like, right? The more you do, the more you can hurt yourself. And it made total sense. Now you're the president. Now you can't be operating from the basement. And here's what I want to set up. In the past, 15 presidents have all held a press conference within the first 30 days of being president. Trump and the first Bush had held 5 by this point in time. Clinton had held 4, George W. 3, and Obama 2. Obama at this point in time had already had 23 interviews with the press. President Biden's had 5. And most of them were kind of softballies. One was with People. CBS News went very light on him. He did the town hall in Milwaukee, but again, a very scripted kind of affair in the sense that, it's not, reporters are the toughest, right? And I'm not picking on the press here. The press is getting a little frustrated with it too. But obviously this is the first easy cheap shot for Republicans. So this is what the chairman of the Republican Party had to say in a tweet about Joe Biden. It's been 42 days and Joe Biden still refuses to hold a press conference. Why is he so afraid of answering questions? Okay, now, in fairness, I don't think Joe Biden's afraid of answering questions at all. I think his handlers are afraid of him answering questions. Honestly, I think Joe Biden would be like, I ain't afraid of anybody. I'll take you around a woodshed and we'll duke it out. Honestly, give the guy credit. I don't think he's scared. I don't think he's scared of anything. He's not a wimpy guy. I've never said Joe Biden's a wuss, Not going to use the P word, then I'd be canceled. But it's not just coming from the right. Okay. The media started to get a little unsettled about it too. And as much as the media wants to have a nice, and every president gets a honeymoon and have a nice relationship with Biden and thinks, look, Biden's not Trump. He's not crazy. He doesn't hate the press. So understandably, all things considered, including the honeymoon period, they're going to be a little easy on him at first, but they're reaching their point too. The Washington Post, again, democracy dies in darkness, their headline, and certainly one of the more liberal publications out there, the editorial board actually wrote an op-ed about it the last couple of days, headlined, we got a picture and a quote from that. Nope. Well, that's fine too. Here it is. It's past time for Biden to hold the news conference. That's their headline. It's past time. And they went on to, it's actually a great editorial, and they went on to say this about it. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said Friday that President Biden would hold a news conference before the end of the month. Last month would have been better, and this week would be better than next. Avoiding news conferences must not become a regular habit for Mr. Biden. He is the president, and Americans have every right to expect that he will regularly submit himself, excuse me, to substantial questioning. Okay, so why isn't Joe Biden holding a press conference, and why does it matter? Okay, so I think the why, again, is a combination of factors. The campaigning from the basement, which Joe Biden did, worked successfully. And the idea of kind of staying out of the limelight a little bit with a guy who's prone to gaffes and prone to be a little tenacious and aggressive with the press isn't necessarily the look they want. He's also, 40 years in the Senate. He's a guy who knows how to work things behind the scenes. And in fairness to him, they may be like, look, we want to get some things handled here. We want to get the COVID thing out. We want to make some legislative successes. All understandable. Again, I don't think Biden's afraid of the press, but I think Biden's people very much don't want him in front of the press. They're very, very hesitant about having that happen. And so what we've done instead is we've had Jen Psaki, the press secretary, who's constantly out there, answering questions. And look, I mean, every press secretary has a hard challenge, right? But Jen Psaki is pretty fun to watch. And she has this thing where she's constantly going, let me get back to you on that. Let me circle back on that. I'm going to circle back on that, right? And it's become kind of a joke. And she does it very earnestly. I'm going to go back. I'm going to find out about that. She's also doing a kind of a thing where she stalls and spins and stalls, as all press secretaries are forced to do. The more direct the press secretary is, the more effective they are. But press secretaries are in a tricky spot. But before I get into that, I took a little montage. A guy named Michael Knowles does a show, and he puts music and stuff to things. And this is just a little clip of her to music doing her circle back thing. Crafty, can we play the little soundbite just to have some fun, guys?
I'll circle back if there's more I can share with you, but I'll circle back if there's more to convey. I'll have to just circle back with you. We can circle back. I'm happy to circle back. I can circle back. I will have to circle back on that one, but I'll have to circle back. We'll circle back, certainly circle back. I will have to circle back on that one. I hate to disappoint you, but I will have to circle back with you on that as well.
We can have a little fun with it, right? And she has fun with it. She made a joke a couple days ago. She's like, okay, I know I like to say I'm going to circle back, so I'm going to circle back, right? But you're in a tough spot as a press secretary. And I think, you can learn a lot from what a press secretary is doing. Some of you know I worked in the Clinton administration, and it was right around the time of the Monica Lewinsky scandal. And at the time, I remember walking into his press secretary's office and saying to him, how do you go out there every day? He had pictures of his kids on the wall. He's really a family guy. And he was a good guy, the press secretary. I was like, how do you go out there every day and lie for the president? Because, Clinton was denying. And again, I don't want to get into whether Clinton should have gotten impeached. He shouldn't have. But he was clearly trying to avoid a scandal, and they were lying about it, and he was saying nothing happened with Monica Lewinsky, the whole deal. And his press secretary said to me, Rob, I never lie. If you watch, I don't lie. I say, the president said, or the president thinks, or I avoid the question. I never tell a lie. And I will give Press Secretary Psaki credit. She's not out there lying. She's avoiding when she has to avoid. She's doing her best to get back to people with information, not wanting to misrepresent things. She's not lying. But it's a tough job to be the press secretary to the president of the United States, because you are their mouthpiece, and yet you have a personal responsibility as a person, the integrity to tell the truth. And it's going to be on you if you're out there lying for the president. So when you're asked questions, you often are in a position of having to go, what does President Biden think about that? Has President Biden changed his mind about that? President Biden said he wasn't going to do this with immigration, and now we've opened the detention centers back up. What does he say? She can't A, put words in his mouth. B, she has to be very careful if she's going to say something that would be a lie. So she has to kind of circle back. I get it. The problem is this. The president needs to be front and center right now. Somebody compared Biden's not holding press conferences to using a more indirect method. They compared it to the fireside chats of FDR back in the day, kind of issuing a lot of statements. The problem is, back in the day, radio was all people had. And FDR did a radio address, and that was like doing Twitter now. And Trump became the Twitter president, communicating nonstop directly to the people, to drive many people mad, bonkers, literally. But it worked. Modern presidents, and it literally transformed Twitter. I mean, Twitter's in business because of Trump, and every world leader now uses Twitter to communicate. I mean, yeah, it used to be it'd be like from the office of the president. Now every politician, every leader, everywhere tweets stuff out. Whether you liked what Trump's tweets were, the medium became a way for him to communicate around the press directly to the people. I understand a president wanting to do that. However, issuing statements is not a way to directly communicate to people in this day and age. Fireside chats are 80, 90, 100 years old practically. You know, the way you communicate directly to people in this day and age is either through social media or you get in front of, again, you could argue if you're getting in front of the press, they're filtering what you say, but you're also able to talk to them directly. Now, in Biden's credit, they finally said the other day, under pressure from the press across the board, that they would hold a press conference sometime in the next month, which, as the Washington Post said, okay, but better if they did it next week and better if they'd already done it. But two is he's going to he's going to give a speech from the Oval Office. That's one way to communicate directly with people. But again, we live in an era where we're so used to authentic, transparent communication that we tend to distrust the most scripted kinds of performances. And a speech from the Oval Office is a hyper scripted event. Biden won't make any mistakes because he's on message 100% word for word. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. But it's not a way to directly communicate to people. Why does that matter right now? Because we are in an unprecedented time. Monkey Arms early on in the show right away tweeted because Biden's busy cleaning up the messes of the last 4 years. Let's say that's your view. I mean, let's argue. Let's just say there's no argument. Whether it's Trump's fault you think it's Trump's fault or not. We got massive challenges ahead of us. We are in the middle of a pandemic trying to come out of it. Our economy has been literally sideswiped by the world's biggest semi-truck and blasted to pieces. You've got millions of people out of work. You have a massive mental health crisis. You have poverty mounting that is going to cause decades-long pain especially for minority communities. You have crumbling infrastructure. You have broken schools. We have an immigration crisis. We've got a climate crisis coming down the pike. I mean, Biden's got more challenges stacked up. Secretary Yellen, Treasury Secretary Yellen said part of the reason this stimulus package is important is because we have got to make sure we don't have what happens in 2008, where it takes us a decade to recover. We have got to infuse enough resources into the economy to keep things going. To keep pushing up. So don't get me wrong. I understand the challenges Biden faces, or any president right now would be facing. But that's why I want Biden front and center, not doing statements through a press secretary, not issuing declarations, and not even just doing things from the Oval Office. I want a leader who is out there in front using the famous bully pulpit to inspire, engage, and move a nation. I'll take the gaffes. I'll take all of it. I want the guy out in front. Yeah, it was interesting to me, to Ronna McDaniel's tweet I showed you at the beginning. I looked at the Twitter feed and the responses, and most of the responses were a version of Monkey Arm's early comment because Trump's busy doing things. I highlighted just two of those tweets. Crafty, do we have those two tweets? Boston Hurricane. The press isn't complaining about the lack of press conferences. Why? Because his administration has been transparent so far, unlike the last administration. And the second tweet, again, I just picked a couple. They all said basically this. Who cares, lady? She's responding to Ronna McDaniels, the RNC chair. He is busy working for the people, getting stuff done. Call his press secretary. I'm sure she'll talk to you. More pointless whining by the obstruct everything GOP. I kind of like that one. Makes me laugh. But here's the thing. They're both wrong. One, the press is getting upset. Because the press is like, we need to be able to ask the president questions. And it's good. It's good that they do. And I'll get to why that's so important and why this is a double-edged sword if Biden isn't out there and isn't getting the hard questions. As to the go ask his press secretary, I kind of addressed that. That's part of the problem, right? The press secretary is not, it's actually a misguided thing. And I used my example of knowing several White House press secretaries during the Clinton administration. The press secretary does not serve as the de facto voice of the president. They have to say what the president tells them to say. They have to be sure not to say what the president doesn't want said. If they were working for Trump, they had to worry about getting their head chopped off if they said the wrong thing. But every president went ballistic when a press secretary said something they didn't want said. The press secretary is not the translator for the president. The press secretary is a wall between the president, designed to shield the president, push out information to the public, but also not to be the president, to be a spokesperson for the president. Whenever someone speaks to their spokesperson, it's different than speaking themselves. So it's not the same to go just ask the press secretary. It's not Jen Psaki's job to be Joe Biden. It's her job to try to filter and translate information as best she can. And in fairness to her, I think she's doing a pretty decent job, given that she's got a president who has not held a press conference. She's de facto having to be the only person the press sees and gets to actually ask questions of on a regular basis. That's what Joe Biden needs to be doing and should be doing. And why it's so important, well, to that second tweet, look, right now, Dems are claiming a huge victory with the COVID package. And I'll say this. One, it's a victory, not a huge victory. It's shocking to me that it took this long to get that COVID package out there. And yes, a lot of Republicans voted against it. I'm not going to go into the weeds on why they felt there was all kinds of extra stuff piled on. To me, it's shocking that they didn't pass a COVID relief package faster. That is about the single easiest thing Joe Biden is going to get passed in his 4 years, is going to be COVID relief. It's one thing, even if Republicans fundamentally all said no, no, no on party lines, they knew it was going to pass. The end of the day, giving relief, I mean, the COVID relief package is basically more unemployment insurance, $1,400 stimulus checks, child tax credits, and a bunch of sort of, like Janet Yellen was saying, kind of, infusion programs. And you can argue, should we, shouldn't we? Are they good? Are they not good? But the reality is we've got a ramsacked economy. Like I said, hit by the world's biggest semi truck, like literally, the semi truck from hell ran through the U.S. economy. Of course, we need a relief package of some kind. And it's not a shocker that passed even with resistance. What the point might be, resistance. Look, the reality of how close margins are right now in both the House and the Senate, 50-50 in the Senate. So Vice President Harris is a tiebreaker. Two moderate Democrats in the Senate who aren't going to give up the filibuster. So that means every single piece of legislation that is not a fiscal piece of legislation can get filibustered and dragged out. So it essentially needs 60 votes. So the reality is they can slow down and hamper just about everything. And I think it's fair to say right now, things go to the Senate. It's the black hole where everything's going to go to die. That's the sad reality right now. And there's a narrow majority in the House for Democrats. They'll pass everything they want with that majority. But seriously, everything's going to go into the Senate sinkhole and die. That pisses me off. I don't want an obstructionist Republican Party. I don't want you just to obstruct everything the Democrats did, even if you think that's what they did to the Republicans. If everyone just keeps obstructing, we just keep getting screwed. But that is the reality. So if you want to overcome an obstructionist Republican Party, if you want to overcome a narrow, razor thin one person vice president tiebreaker in the Senate, if you want to overcome the black hole of death of the U.S. Senate, the president of the United States needs to be out there literally Reagan didn't do a lot of press conferences in the beginning. But like I said, Trump and Bush one had already had 5 at this point. We're in worse times than we have been in every president I named back before Obama. We need a president who's out in front of the press talking to them in press conferences once a week, not less. Literally 3 times more. I want you out there as much as possible, talking to people, convincing them, showing why you as the leader of the United States of America, as one of the most powerful political office holders in the world, are taking charge and are in front, taking the heat, answering the questions, and motivating people and pushing people and shaming Republicans if they're obstructing you and calling Democrats to action. You can say, I want to unite people. For people to argue COVID is proof that Biden pulled the strings from behind the scenes and made it happen is BS. Anybody would have eventually gotten a COVID package through. It's like I said, the lowest hanging fruit of legislation of all the things I named is going to be getting a relief package through that gives people stimulus checks, keeps unemployment going, and infuses money in an economy that's been hit by the semi-truck from hell. So that's why Joe Biden has to be out front and center. Because if he's not, he can't really lead. I call this episode, You Can't Lead from the Shadows, and I mean it. And I am not picking on Joe Biden. I don't care if he makes gaffes. Go ahead and make them. Go ahead and get testy. Go ahead and point fingers at reporters. Unless, and I don't think this is the case, unless Joe Biden really is in early stages of dementia and can't put things together, that's a different story. Because then you'd have a president who's literally like, but I don't think so. I watched his town hall. I don't think he was. Fast Edding. Republicans in 90 seem to be able to get things done. Republicans starting in 2008 seem to begin. Yeah. Look, I think we've gotten to a point where each Congress, each party becomes the obstructionist party in Congress. I would agree with you that the Republicans were obstructionists to Obama, 100%. In fairness, Democrats were even more than 100% obstructionist to Trump and the Republicans. And Republicans controlled both parties houses at one point under Trump, did themselves no favors. The Republican Party is in a terrible disarray. No, it gets no kudos. It gets no kudos. It's just literally mired in its own mess. But so is the most of the Democratic Party. I've said before, I think the progressive wing of the Democratic Party is going to be the change-making future. I think that progressive wing will do it. Who's more racist, Buckingham Palace or Trump? Here you guys go. Hold on, back up for a second. Let me see what Cruzen said. I am not saying, it's a good point, Cruzen. I don't think the liberal media is in Biden's pocket. I think, as I said, the liberal media gave Biden a soft pass in two ways. One, they gave him a pass going into the election. I will not change my view on that. They soft pedaled every possible thing that could hurt Joe Biden. And I don't think it was accidental. Some of it might have just been fundamental bias that people had that hated Trump so much. Sometimes your bias just becomes your reality and you don't even think it's a bias, you know? It's like if you want to go the other extreme, like you meet really racist people, they don't think they're racist. They think they're what they think makes sense. You have to literally pound them in the head and be like, do you get that that's racist? So you could have a bias that's so deep that you don't even know it. But they gave him a pass getting elected. Once he got elected, he gets a honeymoon. I think the liberal media has been softer on Biden in the beginning. I think that's going to change. And I think it has to change. And here's why. Because I actually think the media hurts itself. It hurts itself and it hurts Biden when it's not tough on him. And the same thing is true for Governor Cuomo. You know, this was a funny thing. Backstory quickly, if you haven't been following, Cuomo's, more and more allegations keep coming out about Cuomo, right? And in the last couple of days, there were two more allegations. So you had Charlotte Bennett, you had Lindsey Boylan, you had Karen Hinton, then you had Anna Roos, the woman at the wedding with a picture where he's grabbing her face and she's like, and he's like red-faced, drunk, like leaning in on her, leering in. Then the other day, Anna Liss, another woman, came out and said that he grabbed her cheeks and kissed her on both cheeks and grabbed her waist and whatever. Excuse me. And it's piled up on Cuomo. It's really piling up on him hard. And he said the other day, no way I resign. No way I resign. Well, two things. One, this is the problem with the press soft pedaling. Let me show you two headlines from the same writer in Slate magazine. One about Kavanaugh's hearings and accusations and one about Cuomo's. Can we pop that graphic up, Crafty? Fear a Justice Brett Kavanaugh. This is jurisprudence, Dahlia Lithwick in Slate. At his confirmation, steamrolls ahead, Americans should be terrified. This is Cuomo. Jurisprudence, same writer, same magazine. Maybe it's a good thing Andrew, put that back up, Crafty. Maybe it's a good thing Andrew Cuomo is still governor. The Me Too movement should welcome due process. Just think about that for a second, you guys. Seriously. I mean, one is like, be terrified. Be terrified. Thanks, Crafty. Be terrified. The other is, it's good he's still in office. The Me Too movement needs to slow down and offer due process. I agree with her point, actually. But the double-sided coverage that comes from the press or the soft standard that comes from the press actually hurts people. It hurts Cuomo. Cuomo's getting called on to resign by Democratic leadership in New York. The president of the state Senate issued a statement. Do we have that statement, Crafty? Did I pull it up? I think I did. Yeah. Every day there's another account that's drawing away from the business of government. Majority Leader Andrea Stewart Cousins, who's a Democrat, said in a statement Sunday, New York is in the midst of a pandemic, is still facing societal, health, and economic impacts. We need to govern without distraction. For the good of the state, Governor Cuomo must resign. Okay, that's not an anti-Cuomo person. Thanks, Crafty. That is, that's Democratic leadership going, our state's in trouble right now. We're not able to focus on it. But I believe Andrew Cuomo would be, and I don't think he's going to resign, by the way. And I was right. Those of you who remember, like now it all comes out what a bully he's been the whole time. And I said, I knew Andrew Cuomo years ago. The guy was a bully. That's just who he was. I mean, I watched him bully his family. I watched him bully his mother-in-law. Like he bullied toward me. Like I know someone who worked as his chief of staff. He's a bully. But they kept that kind of hidden. And the problem in doing that is then when stuff like when you raise him up on a pedestal, when you exalt him, when you give him an Emmy, when you say how awesome he is, when CNN has his brother have him come on, call him the Love Gov, best governor in the world, then when shit happens, you're in trouble because then all of a sudden the fall is so much farther. If the media had been tougher on Cuomo the whole time, tough on him for the mistakes, fair and saying he's still doing a good job, all things considered, instead of raising him up on this huge pedestal, he wouldn't have as far down to fall. Look, I'm hitting my mic. I'm so worked up. And I think the same is true for Governor Biden. I do think the U.S. needs a stronger Republican Party, Monkey Arms. I don't know if you're kidding or not, but I think opposition is good. I think obstructionism is bad. So I think the press has a vital role to play in being a real voice to challenge who's ever in power. I think they hurt Biden and hurt Biden's agenda by treating him softly. And I think Biden's team hurts themselves, hurts their president, hurts the administration by keeping him away from the press on a more regular basis. The more he's out there, the more he's challenged, the more he's called on stuff, the more people feel there's a fairness and will give slack and leeway to the mistakes. The more you kind of shield it, hide it, keep it away, soft pedal it, the more other people just, when the truth comes out, or A, a lot of people just become skeptical 100%. They're just skeptics. They don't believe anything they hear. And B, when bad stuff does hit, they hold the person to a higher standard of accountability. It's like you've fallen farther. It's like the pastor at the church who preaches everybody be great and perfect and then found out they're having a cheating scandal on their wife with a prostitute. Kaboom! You know, if they'd come out and said, look, I struggle with issues too. I've struggled with fidelity. It's going to be a whole lot less of a fall. Maybe they're still going, but I'm just saying the less aggressive the press is, the worse it is for Biden and the worse it is for his administration. The press needs to be a hard ass on him, not to be mean to him, not to be unfair, to challenge. If they do that, if Biden's out there every day fighting and making his case, gaffes and all, he's got the best shot of getting things done. And as I said, razor thin margins. The Senate is the black hole where things go to die. Republicans are being obstructionist. If with all that, Biden's going to get nothing done other than a COVID relief plan, which in and of itself is important, but it's barely breaking the ice. Okay, I got to wrap this up. I have just want to bring something up from my last show. I was talking about how I felt essential workers were not getting the whole thing with teachers and whether teachers suddenly become more essential. And I was like, how come there's no concern for the little guys out there, the people working in grocery stores, the people delivering things, the people who've been there the whole time in the pandemic? Why are they not considered essential? Why do everyone suddenly, I'm essential now, but for the last year, we had these people and still who are the real front line other than healthcare workers, and they don't get priority vaccination. Right as our show was ending, someone on Facebook popped up a message and didn't make it in the stream, and I wanted to just pop it up and read it to you guys. Kimberly McMichael Rowland, UPS driver here. We've been working 6 days a week since May of 2020. We are in hospitals, nursing homes, assisted living facilities, colleges, and delivered to the public schools. Why are we and millions of others the ones that don't matter? We deliver the vaccine, myself personally and many of my coworkers, but we don't matter. If we stop to help our kids with education, who will deliver the vaccine? And what she's saying is, if we can't put our kids in school, who's going to deliver the vaccine? But what struck me is, why don't we matter? That's how they feel. That's how the drivers feel. That's how the grocery store workers feel. That's how the retail workers feel. Why aren't we important when we're the ones literally making everything work for you guys for the last year? First of all, a shout out to all those people. Not only do they matter, they should have been given much more money should have been fused into giving them resources to, clean, sanitize, ventilate places, protective gear for all of them. But also they should have been in the front line of getting vaccines. Old people, healthcare workers, and all those people who really were essential workers for the last year. Shout out to what they've done. Every single one of us should take a minute and realize if you're sitting home getting drop dash, that person's out there taking the risk, and they should get it. And in my opinion, they should get it before teachers. All right. Thank you guys for watching. I'm all worked up. It's Rob Nelson Live. We'll see you on Wednesday.